Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Welcome back, adventurers. Today we're going to kick off our discussion about conditions. Conditions is a broad term, and here what I mean is temporary changes to a creature due to some outside influence. A few examples that you've probably heard of already just by playing the game or looking into it are frightened, blinded, invisible, dying, even friendly. As you can see, there's a mixed bag in what are good and bad conditions and what they can even be. Both are valuable in Pathfinder2e, however. We're going to walk through these conditions alphabetically, and we're going to take our time. Don't expect to memorize how all these work. That's not worth your time. Instead, get a good idea from this video, and then make sure to have archives of Nethys available to you whenever you're trying to run or play the game. That way you don't have to worry about memorizing them all. Now, some of them you'll use so often you probably will memorize them, but don't make that the goal. While we're running through the conditions, we are running through them alphabetically, but also by type. Today, we're only going to talk about what I call character combat conditions. These are conditions that affect a creature or character, specifically within combat, so we're going to ignore things like social conditions in today's chat. Depending on how long this runs, I may even split this into 2 videos, just because there's a lot of conditions to cover. As we talk about them, I'll also give my feelings on how strong I think they are, but don't worry too much about that either. They're going to come up. One reason that you might want to really focus on understanding certain conditions is you may be playing a character that is a spellcaster that inflicts a lot of conditions on enemies. You may be a physical combat character that can create a lot of these conditions happening just by the way you interact in melee with other creatures. So pay attention to the ones that fit you the best for now, but it's good to understand them all because they're probably going to happen to you at some point. I feel like that's enough build up, so let's go ahead and jump in here with blinded. You can't see. Yeah, you critically fail any check that requires you to see, and if sight is the only precise sense that you have, you're going to get a -4 circumstance penalty to status penalty, to perception checks. Now, for things you might not expect. While blinded, all terrain is difficult terrain because you're fumbling around. On the plus side, you are immune to visual effects, things that would dazzle you, which can happen quite a bit, actually. Finally, if you do have the dazzled condition when you're blinded, blinded overrides the dazzled condition. This is, it's fairly strong. It's not amongst the absolute strongest conditions because even though you're blind, you're still able to target creatures, and you don't have some disadvantage to your attack rolls, which makes this not as powerful as it is in some systems. It's still useful, but I wouldn't say go out of your way to blind every enemy. Clumsy. I'll say this quite a few times, but clumsy, like many others, are conditions that must include a value. So you aren't just clumsy, you're clumsy 1, or clumsy 2, or clumsy 3, so on and so forth. Whatever the value is the penalty that you take to all things dexterity. This means AC, reflex saves, acrobatics checks, stealth checks, everything dexterity-based. Even your dex-based attack rolls for ranged and finesse weapons are taking a penalty here. So clumsy for a dex-based character is catastrophic. Depending on what creatures you're fighting, this could be very strong against them. Any AC penalty is strong. So keep that in mind because increasing everybody else's chance to hit is an important thing to be able to do. I wouldn't say it's the upper echelon of conditions, but it's fairly strong. If you can inflict clumsy, not a bad idea. Concealed. This is one of the detection-related conditions. In this case, whoever you are concealed from can see you, but not very well. Maybe the air around you is hazy, for instance. If a creature you're concealed from tries to target you with anything, a spell attack, a ranged physical attacks, healing spells, whatever it may be, they have to succeed on a DC 5 flat check, which means you have to roll a D20 and get a 5 or better without any modification, or they fail to target you. So this can be good or bad. Being concealed from your friends might mean you don't get a heal spell. Being concealed from an enemy might mean they just miss with that boulder they were throwing at you. Confused. You can no longer recognize friend from foe. You are off guard to everything and everyone. You have to spend all of your actions attacking at random. This will be the GM helping you make sure it's at random. If you can't attack from where you are, you have to move up to where you can attack something and then attack. if nothing can possibly be in range of anything that you can attack, you attack yourself. Confused is an awful condition to be inflicted with, which means if you can inflict it on an enemy creature, especially one in the back who's just surrounded by its friends, it is extremely powerful. So confused is a scary condition. Controlled. Something else takes over and uses you however they wish. That's it. And that's horrible. Controlled is the strongest condition in the game. Don't get it on you, and if you can inflict it on something else, do so. Controlled is extremely powerful. Dazzled. If you don't have any precise senses other than vision, all creatures are concealed to you. That's it. And we already covered the whole blinded and concealment thing, so hooray. I don't consider Dazzled the strongest. It's not bad, but I wouldn't rely on it to shut somebody down. Deafened. You can't hear. Surprise, surprise, right? Nobody saw that coming. There are some aspects of Deafened, though, that you probably don't see coming. So you crit fail any perception check that requires you to hear, and you get a -2 on initiative rolls and perception checks using your other senses. Unexpected, probably by most people. The really interesting part, though, is that while you're deafened, if you use an action that has the auditory trait, many spells, in fact, have this for casting, you have to succeed at a DC 5 flat check or the action fails. If it was a spell, you still use it, the spell slot and the actions, just nothing happens. On the upside, you can't be affected by auditory effects while deafened, so it's not a huge upside, but there's some upside maybe. Doomed. To understand this, we really need to talk about dying, which is actually about to come up. So this is a 2-for-1. When you fall unconscious from taking damage and have 0 hit points, you are dying. You start at dying 1, and if you fail a recovery check, your dying value increases. So from 1 to 2. You die if you reach dying 4. More on dying again in a bit. With all that set up, that's to say that doomed reduces the value at which you die. So normally you die at dying 4. If you're doomed 1, you die at dying 3. If you're doomed 2, you die at dying 2. This is incredibly brutal, and it only goes away one at a time after a night's rest. So if you get doomed 2, you've got some serious troubling days ahead. Doomed is one of the most frightening conditions to a player character and one of the least scary to enemy creatures, because usually you don't worry about the whole dying value thing. They hit 0 and they usually just die. So for you as a player character, awful. Drained. This is another condition that always has a value. So drained 1, drained 2, all of that. And another one that is absolutely brutal. The first issue is that the drain value is a status penalty to your fortitude saves. And that's the least awful part of this. So there you go. You're taking a penalty. The real issue, though, is that it reduces your maximum hit points equal to your level times the drained value. So your level 10, you get drained 2. Your maximum and current hit points drop by 20. That's horrible. And then to top it all off, like the Doom condition, it only reduces by 1 after each full night's rest, at which point your HP rises up, but your current HP doesn't. So even after a night's rest, you're going to get, 10 of your hit points back as a maximum goes, but you aren't actually going to heal those 10 hit points. Drained is horrible. Again, much worse for you as a player character than it is for enemy creatures, but in this case, it's pretty brutal for both. Dying. We're going to do a whole video about dying at some point because there's a lot of interactions that go with it. We talked about how it starts, and that at the beginning of each of your turns while you're dying, you have to roll a check and you have to see if you can better your situation. The recovery check is a flat check with a DC equal to 10 plus your dying value. So yes, it gets harder the longer you've been dying, which is crazy. The outcome can do anything from make you better by 2 stages, if you get a crit success, or bring you from something like dying 3 to dying 1, or it can make you worse by 2 stages. If you critically fail, you can go from dying 1 down to dying 3. If you would manage to get what would be dying 0, while you're currently in dying rolling for checks, so let's say you're dying 1 and you get a success, and it brings you then to what would be dying 0, you're still unconscious, but you're no longer dying. If you're ever healed, even to 1 hit point, You wake up and you aren't unconscious. You gain or increase the wounded condition, which is another one we're not going to get to for a while, after coming out of the dying condition. So if you play D&D 5e, you might be aware of the death yo-yo, where, oh, you get knocked down, you start dying, somebody heals you, you get back to 2 hit points, great. Something knocks you down again, oh well, you get healed again. Well, you're going to instead increase a wounded condition here, and that starts your dying value at higher values in the future. So the yo-yo doesn't last as long in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Finally, if you take damage from any enemy while dying, you increase your dying condition by 1 or 2 if it's a critical hit. So if something's just beating on you while you're on the ground, you're probably going to die really quickly. Enfeebled. Less traumatic than dying. This is the strength version of clumsy. So it always has a value. Again, we talked about that with clumsy. And it reduces your strength checks, strength-based DCs, and strength-based attack and damage rolls by the value given. So if you're, enfeebled 2, okay, your chance to hit gets reduced by 2, and the damage you deal with your strength-based attacks goes down by 2. But compared to dropping your AC or some of the other things we've seen, it's not nearly as brutal. So actually, enfeebled isn't that strong. Keep in mind, if you're a spellcaster and you're taking any sort of spell that causes enfeebled, use it sparingly, unless you've got a very good reason to do so. If you're going to, enfeeble some brutish thing that's going to come up and try to grapple everybody and smash them into things, okay, this will reduce the chance that they successfully grapple. But it's not your best condition to impart. All right, we're just going to try to get through the H's today so that this doesn't go on forever. Fascinated. You are focused on a specific subject, the subject of your fascination. This means you get a -2 status penalty to perception checks and skill checks just in general. It also means you can't use any action that has the concentrate trait to it, like many spells do, unless the target of your fascination is also the target of your concentrate action. So if I'm using a spell that has the concentrate trait, which isn't all of them, but it does happen, and I want to try to use it to affect target B, but I'm fascinated by target A, not going to happen. I cannot cast that. I have to make sure it's targeting target A. The thing that makes this condition not scary at all is that it ends if a creature takes harmful actions against you or any of your allies. So great, I'm fascinated by creature A, and creature B slaps my friend. Oh, fascination over, I can do whatever I want. So it's very easy to get rid of this specific condition, which means it's also not the strongest condition for you to put onto an enemy creature, or your allies are going to break it instantly. Fleeing. You are forced to use all of your actions to get as far away from the source of your fleeing condition as possible on your turn. In a small room with just windows, time to break through those windows. Only way out is a ladder to the roof? Well, guess what? Start climbing. All actions every turn have to get you away from that target as long as you have this condition. Frightened. One of the most common conditions for a player to inflict on creatures, or for creatures to inflict, honestly. This always has a value. So frightened 2, for instance. You take that value as a status penalty to all checks and DCs. This means saving throws, skill checks, attack rolls, their own spell save DCs, ACs, initiative, you name it, it just got reduced. While it is incredibly punishing, your frightened value decreases by 1 at the end of each of your turns, just on its own. So it'll go away over time, even though there's no quicker way to necessarily get rid of it other than spells. Still, it has a timer on it, so you can eventually escape it. I would put frightened as one of those pinnacle ones. Even though it goes away quickly, it is just devastating to have on a creature. Grabbed. This is the outcome of being successfully grappled. You are off guard and immobilized, and both of those will come up later. So you won't be going anywhere, and critical hits are probably coming your way. Also, if you try to take any action with the manipulate trait, you have to pass a DC 5 flat check, or you just fail at that action. This could be something like treating wounds or casting one of a lot of different spells. To end this condition, you have to successfully escape using an escape check, with this, which is either athletics or acrobatics, but that increases your multiple attack penalty because the escape has the attack trait. So even escaping this harms you, assuming you wanted to attack. And our final condition for this video is hidden. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, this means that creatures still know where you are, they just can't directly observe you. This is like when Batman sits in the pitch black and monologues at thugs trying to find him. You know where he is, but they just can't easily target him. Same thing happens here. So if you are hidden from a creature, that creature must succeed at a DC 11 flat check or fail to target you, losing the actions that they spent. So if I'm trying to target a hidden creature and I want to shoot an arrow at them, I have to roll an 11 or better on a flat DC 20, or I'm just going to fire an arrow into nothingness. This can be true even if you are trying to target an ally that's hidden from you and you want to, say, heal them. So keep in mind, just like Concealed, being hidden from allies isn't always a great plan. Finally, if you are hidden from a creature, that creature is off guard to you. So there's a nice bonus to you as well. Not only can they not target you, now they have a lower AC against your attacks. All right, let's leave it here for today. Keep in mind that player characters, monsters, NPCs, every creature can have these conditions. If you have a way to inflict these conditions, you should really try to do so. They swing the battlefield in ways you really can't even feel until you've done it. So go out there, frighten some enemies, and as always, adventure on.